Well, hello there, everybody. Welcome back to the Plant Path. Sage of Popham here, founder of the School of Evolutionary Herbalism and Natura Sophia Spagyrics. And we're going to do another book review. This time we're going to do one of my first, actually serious herb books. This was actually my textbook from when I was attending Bastyr University. This is Medical Herbalism by David Hoffman. And as you can see, my version of Medical Herbalism is very well loved and read, and I should probably get a new version of it, honestly, but I kind of like my beat up old version because it just looks well loved. And I've used this book a lot. And I gotta tell you, if I was to make an herb book recommendation, this one's up there for me, especially for those of you, who would I recommend this book to? I would recommend this book to any of you that want to have a little bit more of, I would say, a scientific understanding of the herbs and cultivating a way of thinking about the herbs, thinking about how you would use them to treat people in more of a, conventional medical sense. This is a little bit more, this is not like your down home country folk herbalism kind of home remedy kind of book, right? This is more, as the name implies, I would say a little more medical level textbook, basically, for how to think about and apply herbal medicine. Now, what I want to do in these book reviews is just kind of walk through a little bit of what's in the book, what I like about it, and why I would recommend it. So part one of Medical Herbalism is really based on principles and practices. What I like about it is that he, as a big chunk of the first part of this book, is on phytochemistry. This was my first book that introduced me to phytochemistry. I loved the breakdown of the different categories of chemicals in plants, some examples of chemicals and the herbs that contain those chemicals, as well as some mechanisms of action of what those chemicals do within the body. Now, do we need to know that stuff to be a good clinical herbalist? No. Is it super interesting to people that think that kind of stuff is interesting? For sure. I also think it can be very useful if you find yourself in positions where maybe you need to communicate to a doctor, a primary care practitioner, to a client that might be more scientifically inclined. You can use this type of knowledge to sound more scientific, sound more medically oriented, basically. Not just sound like, but be that way, right? I mean, you don't want to be fake, and you want to give real accurate information, but I think you get my point, right? Understanding the chemistry of the herbs can be a very useful way to bring that information out. So he's got some really great stuff on the foundations based on, the classification of plants, the chemistry, and then based on that chemistry, how herbs are prepared. So he goes through all the different forms of herbal medicines, from your water extracts to your different forms of tinctures, capsules, pills, topical preparations, etc. And also going into toxicology, contraindications, and safety. So that's part one. Part two is, to me, where this book really shines, which is treatment approaches by body system. So I really like how Hoffman breaks it down by the organ system. And I just want to open one up here to take a look. So what I like about it is that he goes into each organ system. And then, as you can see, there's lots and lots of info here. So the digestive system, for example, this is, how many pages is this? 50 pages, or almost 50 pages here just on the GI. So he's going through some of the basic foundational stuff for that organ system. Now, the one thing that I kind of wish was in this book that's not is a little more in-depth A&P. To me, when I'm studying an organ system, it's pathophysiology, it's Materiamedica, it's treatment and therapeutics. Like, I think A and P goes really well in there. Now, obviously, this is a massive book. He probably just didn't have the space to put it in there, which, you know, with publishers and stuff, all that kind of stuff happens. But I kind of wish there was a little bit of anatomy and physiology in there. Obviously, we can get that elsewhere, but he does go through some of the main kind of contributing factors to health complications in that organ system. So, and then what he does is he goes into digestive system disorders. And then what I love is he goes into the primary actions for that system. So we can see here, he's got a chart which just has the main herbal actions that you would want to use to address, in this example, the digestive system, and then some examples of herbs that you would use for that action. So like demulcent, and he's got some Phytum officinale, Althea officinalis, Ulmus ruba, Glycyrrhiza glabra, as our GI demulcents, right? Comfrey, marshmallow, slippery elm, licorice. Bitter tonic, Artemisia absinthium, Gentiana lutea, Hydrastis canadensis, right? So that would be wormwood, gentian, and golden seal. He's got an example of a milder bitter with Achillea millefolium and Matricaria recutita, which would be yarrow and chamomile. Astringent, Agramonia eupatoria, agrimony, Geranium maculatum, cranesbill, filipendula, ulmaria, meadowsweet, and Myrica cerifera, which is bayberry, etc. So it's not like an exhaustive list of the herbs. It's just examples of herbs that go into that action category for addressing that system. So I love that differentiation of really refining, rather than here's a list of all the demulcents. It's like, no, here's the digestive demulcents, like the key ones that you want to consider. Then he goes through the disorders of that system. He will give textbook definitions, right, from medical dictionaries of what that term is. So like, what is flatulence? What is constipation? He goes into, you know, for example, talking about constipation. He defines it, different contributing factors. He goes into what laxatives are, different types of laxatives, bulk forming agents, dietary fiber, anthraquinone laxatives, appropriate and inappropriate use of laxatives. And then he goes into the treatment. So what are the basic strategies that you want to take towards treating that? And then he'll typically give simple triplet formulas. Now, this is one thing about this book that I really, really like. And it's actually taken me, you know what, when was I guess I got this book probably 18 years ago. Has it been 18 years? Wow. Yeah, it's probably 18 years ago. It's taken me a long time to really appreciate the way he puts his formulas, because these are not complex formulas. And actually at a period of time, I was like, really? That's it? Only 3 herbs? Like, what? Why isn't this a more complex formula? What I like is the simplicity of it, and that when you start with the base triplet or pair, basically all of his formulas are pairs or triplets. So he gives some more complex formulas, but a lot of the time it is not overly, like most of these are triplets. So let me look at some of these here. So, okay, so for example, he's got gastroesophageal reflux disease, and he's talking about that. And then he says, okay, here's the indicated actions. Okay, you want demulcents to soothe and coat the tissues of the esophagus, insulate the mucosal lining against acidic gastric contents. You want anti-inflammatories to reduce localized mucosal reactions. Vulneraries to aid the healing of ulcerations and lesions. Astringents to lessen local bleeding and other exudations. Alteratives to help the body deal with any systemic problems related to the disease. Carminatives may be needed if there is general disruption of the digestive process. Caution, bitters are contraindicated in the initial stages of treatment as they stimulate the secretion of stomach acid as well as peristaltic activity. Okay, that's really great. Then he says, here's a prescription for GERD. 2 parts Althea officinalis, marshmallow, 1 part Calendula officinalis, 1 part Matricaria recutita, chamomile. Dosage, up to 5 ml of tincture 3 times a day. In addition, an infusion of the anti-inflammatory herb Matricaria, chamomile, sipped slowly throughout the day can be helpful. As an alternative, a cold infusion of Althea root can be taken whenever needed. So that's really cool. Then what he does is he goes actions supplied by GERD prescription. So then he goes, here's all the actions that are in this simple triplet. So this triplet has demulcent, lymphatic, vulnerary, astringent, anti-inflammatory, and carminative, right? So it has all the actions that we want, and he lists the herbs that have those actions. And then broader context of treatment. So and then he just gives some other miscellaneous stuff that can be helpful to consider, like raise the head of the bed, avoid stooping and constricting pressure on the abdomen, avoid foods and beverages, certain foods and beverages, decrease the size of portions at mealtime, lose weight, avoid alcohol, stop smoking, etc. So it's really nice. I love how this is set up. It's like, here's the condition, here's what it's defined as, here's how you want to consider treating it, the actions that you want your herbs to have, here's some specific remedies, here's an example basic pair or triplet formula, here's what that formula does. It's just like, it gives you a logical framework to think through therapeutics, and I love that. It's a really great approach. I've been using this book for a really long time. I've referenced a lot of Hoffman's baseline triplets here. I have used for foundations of my formulas over and over and over again. So this is fantastic. In some cases, he gives you multiple options for formulas, which is very, very nice. So that is the bulk of the book. Okay, so you got your, let's see, yeah, that comes up to here, phytotherapy in children, phytotherapy in the elderly, and that's what caps off your body system, section 2 of the book. Which is a really useful approach. Now, what I like here is in the beginning of the treatment, a model of holistic herbal medicine. So this is your treatment by organ system section of the book. So what he does here in a model of holistic herbal medicine is he breaks down the approach for how you classify your herbs, what your context is for classification in terms of actions. Now, one of the things that I'm not too keen on, and I think this is just David Hoffman's approach. I remember being at a lecture with him one time, and he described himself more as a mechanic. He was like, I'm just a mechanic, like something in your body's broken. I'm going to give you an herb to fix it. So he is very kind of mechanistic in his approach, I would say. So he doesn't include energetics. And I just don't think that's in his mindset or approach of using herbal medicine, and that's fine. But I personally like having energetics overlaid. So like, for example, with diuretics, I like to know which ones are warming, which ones are cooling. Expectorants are useful. He does have some differentiation with expectorants where he breaks down stimulating versus relaxing expectorants. So that's useful. He breaks down nervines into some different categories. Where he has nervine tonics, relaxants, stimulants. So he kind of uses the stimulant, relaxant, tonic framework, which is very much a physiomedicalist classification, sub-classification system. And then he has kind of his model, his approach. So how to choose your remedies, right? So he says, through some competent diagnostic procedure, identify what physiological processes to address and in what way. 2, select actions appropriate to address the physiological and pathophysiological processes identified through diagnosis. 3, select relevant herbs based on their range of primary and secondary actions, thus ensuring the best fit for the needs of the patient. This is really good stuff right here. So, and I like that too, is that he breaks down primary and secondary actions. So in some issues in the body, you'll say, okay, here's the primary actions that you really want to have in your formula. Here's some secondary actions that can be very useful. And then in the listings of the herbs, he'll say, and this is what goes into the kind of a later section of the book with herbal actions, where he really defines the herbal action. He gives you a list of herbs that have that action, and then he will give secondary actions. So like for alteratives, for example, he'll say, okay, here's a list of alteratives, primary alterative herbs, and then here's secondary actions with alternatives. So like alternatives that are also antimicrobial: Agathosma betulina, Allium sativum, garlic, Baptisia tinctoria or wild indigo, echinacea, hydrastis or golden seal, Laria tridentata, that's just chaparral, Phytolacca americana, poke root, etc. Alternatives with secondary actions say that are bitter: Arctium lapa, Hydrastis canadensis, Meanthes trifoliata. Alternatives that have secondary expectorant properties: Sanguinaria canadensis or bloodroot, Trifolium pratense, red clover, and Verbascum thapsus, mullein. So I love that. Here's the main action of alternatives, and here's herbs that have this secondary action as well. So that just helps you get more specific. So I wanted to read you this. Best way to approach the selection process is to follow a number of steps. This may seem a long and potentially tedious process when first starting, but it becomes straightforward with practice. 1. List the signs and symptoms for each problem. 2. Interpret the process behind the symptoms and the underlying pathology, and identify appropriate herbal actions to address them. 3. Using the reference lists in chapter 25, which would be our herbal, I believe that's this chapter. Yeah, herbal actions chapter. Find herbs that may be helpful based on their primary and secondary actions. 4. Identify body systems that would benefit from the use of tonic herbs and choose relevant tonics. 5. Are there any biochemical considerations? These might be positive indications for certain plants or clear contraindications. 6. Integrate the conclusions drawn in the previous steps and develop a prescription. 7. Identify other healing modalities and lifestyle issues that might support the action of the herbs. Okay, great. So the chapter is a model of holistic herbal medicine. So it wouldn't be holistic if he didn't mention part 7, in my opinion. So he really goes into he's a very action-based herbalist. And I love that, because any of you that have followed my work for a period of time knows, I think I was very heavily influenced by David Hoffman. I've literally read through this whole book like a couple times at least. So the action-based approach is really central to my model. It was also very much central to the approach that we took to studying herbs at Bastyr. So it was very much actions oriented. So that's why I like chapter 25, which goes into a lot of depth on herbal actions. I find a lot of books that have actions in them just will kind of give you a really quick paragraph description and not really break it down in as much detail. So I love these charts with the secondary actions, also the relative strength. So for example, he has the relative strengths of alterative herbs: mild, strong, very strong, i.e. used with care. So like in the very strong category, he has Iris versicolor, blue flag, Laria tridentata, or chaparral, Phytolacca americana, poke root, Sassafras albidum. That would be just sassafras. That's interesting. Yeah, I guess it can be a little toxic if you take too much. Stillingia sylvatica. Stillingia, for sure, that's a really strong remedy. Bloodroot or Sanguinaria canadensis, definitely got to be careful with that one too. So anti-catarrhal herbs and secondary, it's just fantastic resource. So I think this is one of those books where if you're just getting started in herbal medicine and you're clearly like, I want to practice clinically, I really want to understand the herbs, in order to practice clinical. I think this is an invaluable book. It can be a little expensive, worth every penny. If anyone wants to buy my totally shredded up copy, let me know. I'll sell it to you for a good price. That way I can buy a new one. No, I'm just kidding. I like my copy. I'm keeping it. So yeah, I mean, you could also get all my personal notes, which are top secret, because I've written all in this book. Like here in the emmenagogue action, I can see that I wrote down which ones are all bitter. I also wrote down which ones are all spasmolytic, because for some reason he didn't seem to sub-classify his emmenagogues. So I added like, oh, these ones are bitter and these ones are antispasmodic. These ones are circulatory stimulant. That was just my notes that I put in there. So the herbal action section is very good. Then it gets into Materiamedica, and his Materiamedica listings are good. I like the constituent. I find the constituent section nice. He really just kind of gets right to it of like what the indications are. So the Materiamedica, you got your Latin name, your common name, your family, the part of the herb used, the constituents, the actions, and then the indications, which will be the descriptions. I find some of the indications are, in my opinion, a little bit wanting. I mean, I think they get right to it. They don't have quite as much detail as I like in a monograph, but that's just because I really like, I think more is better. I like long, lengthy descriptions, but sometimes quick descriptions are good too when you're in a pinch and you just need to like, wait, what does that herb do again? Then he goes into safety considerations, preparations and dosage. Those are typically based off of the British Herbal Pharmacopoeia, BHP, but he usually has Commission E as well, which is the German standardization, the German Commission E requirements. And he'll mention some of the United States dispensatory too, but it's usually because he's British. I think he uses the BHP mostly for his dosage recommendations. Very, very good book. It's been a minute since I've opened it, so I'm like, oh, I'm remembering. So it's a pretty good, extensive Materiamedica. I think he's got a majority of the main Western herbs, so it's mostly European herbs. There's some North American herbs in here as well. It's a Western Materiamedica, okay? So he's not really getting into any Ayurvedic herbs or Chinese herbs. These are Western herbs, which is just good to be aware of. Then in the back, there's a good glossary. A lot of books don't have a glossary, so it's a really nice, quick reference guide for the glossary. And then the binomial meanings. I think this is a really cool thing. So, you know, all of the Latin names of plants, the binomial, right, the genus and species, a lot of those terms have meaning to them. So I really like this. To look at this, like, you know, for example, it says belladonna means beautiful lady. Benedictus, so this would be like Snicus benedictus, which is the blessed thistle. So benedictus means well or agreeable. Botanica, which would be wood betony, Botanica officinale or Stachy's botanica. Vetonica is the name in Pliny of a medicinal plant growing in the region of Spain called vectones or vetones. Right? Super interesting. So there's this really selected example of binomial meanings appendix, and then herbs by Latin and common name. This is very useful. So he's got them organized by common name so that you can look at what the Latin name of it is. And I think he's got a Latin, yeah, so Latin in alphabetical to common, and then common in alphabetical to Latin, so that's very useful. He's got pharmacy terms here as well, which can be very useful too. And then he's got some herbal formulation stuff, weights and measure conversions, and a place to get more information. And that, my friends, is my review of David Hoffman's Medical Herbalism. I'm curious when this was first published, actually. Okay, so this is 2003. So, you know, it's over 20 years old at this point. Does that mean it's outdated? No. Obviously, he does reference some studies and science in there. I'm sure there's much more that could be added to that. I don't know if he has newer editions of this book. As far as I know, I think there's just the one edition of it. But it is an excellent book. I highly recommend those of you that are interested in more of a medical-oriented textbook for clinical herbalism. I think medical herbalism should absolutely be on your bookshelf. You should read it. Don't just reference it, read it. I know you get books like this and it just kind of ends up turning into a reference book. Don't treat medical herbalism like a reference book. Use it as a reference book for sure, but don't treat it as one. Read it from start to finish. It will serve you well. This book has had a very positive impact on my practice of herbal medicine. And I say thank you to you, David Hoffman, for writing it. This was probably quite the project, and I absolutely adore your book if for some reason you ever find yourself watching this. So thank you so much, everybody, for making it to the end of this episode of The Plant Path. I really appreciate it. It does help our channels more than you might know by watching or listening this far into it. And if you enjoyed this, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. I know a lot of you all, maybe watch or listen, but are not subscribed. So just take that second to move your little finger or your cursor to click that little button to subscribe. That way you'll get updates whenever we're publishing new content, which is generally on about roughly a weekly basis. We miss one every now and then, but we try to be relatively consistent with it. So if you are watching or listening anywhere other than our website, head on over to evolutionaryherbalism.com to learn more about what we're up to at the School of Evolutionary Herbalism and check out our vast library of free information there about herbal medicine, plants, clinical practice, medical astrology, alchemy and spagyrics, all that good stuff. And of course, if you are wanting to find a good source for using some liquid extracts of plants, specifically in the alchemical or spagyric form, check out our product line, naturasophiaspagyrics.com. And I just want to thank each and every one of you for tuning in to The Plant Path. I really appreciate it. And until the next one, take care and be well.